reason why I sent two images is because these are sort of simple references, but we may end up just painting one. So tell me which one you'd like to start with. The one with the ship or the sailboat?
I like the sailboat because I'd like to see how you do the crashing wave there.
Okay, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you guys wanted to do the wave, so let's do that. Okay, perfect. So let's start with that. And in this case, in terms of drawing, all I'm going to do, okay, let me just put it somewhere here. All you have to do is basically indicate where your horizon line is, which is a little bit above the middle. And here I am, just leaving more space for the water, less space for the sky, and we will draw roughly this sailboat. So we have a bit of a shape, and it will be the body of the boat will be a little bit below the horizon. So it's going to be right here, and there's something happening right here. But we have beautiful colors. We will use a lot of wet on wet, and we will have a lot of fun with this wave. So I'm just very roughly indicating where this diagonal is. See this wave kind of going all the way here, and this is it. That's all we need really for drawing. So in this case, we're kind of ready to paint. If things clear, just let me know and say, yay, it's clear. So I can see if anything is making any difference. But
it's actually pretty clear right now.
Yeah,
it goes out sometimes.
Okay, so maybe if I start painting and it kind of starts picking things, it may improve. Hopefully, I'm just hoping for the best. So let's hope for the best and let's get going. So everything is recording anyway, so we'll be good. Now again, wet on wet, and I'm taking my biggest brush, like the biggest.
Hey, Lyudmila, will you tell us what colors you're planning on using?
Okay. So right now, what I'm using is, and to tell you frankly, I don't know ahead of time what I'm going to be using, but what I have on my palette is Ultramarine Deep. Also, I have Permanent Yellow Orange. So my suggestion is either orange, any orange should do, and also yellow, cadmium yellow if you have. And I have this wonderful yellow, lemon yellow that I have from a different set that is very, very opaque. It's wonderful. I have a quinacridone red here on my palette, and I have some colors from before. I think it's called Peacock blue, but it could be a cerulean blue. It's kind of in that family. It's a little bit of a greener blue than the ultramarine. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to put some black, or if you have indigo, actually this is not black, I have Payne's gray, so I'm going to put Payne's gray because I need to darken the blue a little bit. So these are basically the colors, but the colors change as we go, and I usually tell you what I'm mixing. So just as long as you have, the basic yellow, orange, a cool red, which is this quinacridone red, and have a cadmium red, which is the warmer red, a cool blue, and a warmer blue, which is more of a greenish blue, and some really dark color like a Payne's gray, and we're all on the right track. So again, wet on wet, and we're starting from the top. And again, pay attention, because in the right here, kind of on the upper third, we will have this wonderful light, basically the sun that is behind that cloud. We're going to use wet on wet. I'm going to use it wet on wet everywhere, but we're going to leave it white. And I'm still wetting it, really. I'm putting like water everywhere, but I'm just going to leave this whole area the white of the paper. So let's start first with that sky, And we're gonna start with the yellow, the warm yellow, like a cadmium yellow. Also have this little bit of an orange. It's an orange yellow, that's what it said. Permanent yellow orange. Yeah, it's a really nice color. It's very nice. It's between orange and yellow. I love it. It's very warm. So I'm taking my big brush and just go straight across and just stop right where the light is going to be, like right where the sun is going to be. And here I'm going to go a little bit here to the bottom, and then we continue on the other side. And here we go, a little bit on the top, and this is kind of our underpainting. And I'm going to also run clean water on that edge right here, and it's not very clean. If it's yellow, it's still fine, because this is going to be an saturated painting. We don't want it to make it too light. We want it to be nice and intense. So we have this nice light area since it's all wet on wet. And now immediately I'm going to add this quinacridone red. I'm going to mix it with some orange, whatever orange you guys have. I know all the names are different, so I just want to make it really intense because we are painting alla prima. We are not on the sky. We're not going to go second layer, so everything should be painted right away. I'm just adding these red colors. So a little. I have this also Crimson Lake, which is sort of on the pink side. I like it. It's cool. You can also add some orange to it, and I'm just adding. Don't try not to make it too even. I know it tends to turn smooth and nice, but come and go in. Maybe some of these brush strokes could have some variation. So I'm just adding a little bit of red right on top, and a little bit of red on this side. And again, I'm going to add some water. Let's add some water right here. Is anything clearing at all or no? We don't know. All right, so I'm just adding some water just to soften it a little bit. And now with a different brush, something with a point, still big brush, we're going to paint clouds. And again, same color, but make sure it's intense. So I'm getting the quinacridone red. If you don't have quinacridone red or magenta, get the alizarin crimson, which is more of a cooler red, or just red in general. Just any red will do, but make it intense, like highly saturated. So I'm putting lots of pigment, lots of water. My paper is still very wet. Thank goodness it's very humid in Florida and I'm outside. Okay, so here we're going to add these clouds right on top of this.
And yes, it is clear, Lyudmila. Maybe it needed color.
Maybe it needed color. Maybe it needed some movement. It was probably wondering, what is going on? Why am I on? Oh, thank goodness, yes. Yeah, that should be really the strongest connection because it is directly from the internet. So I'm just putting my brush strokes sort of horizontally a little bit to create some edges, so you can see some uneven edges, and I'm just adding a bit of a color, mixed it. And because my oops, look what's happening. Yes, something just flew out. Maybe I shouldn't have my water right in front of the painting. I should just move it probably here. All right, so we're going to clean this a little. And even if things start flying away, that's okay. And in this case, you may want to even lift your paper and kind of let things drip a little bit, create some nice dripping effect. And we will take this red Okay, I'm adding clouds. I know, and if things are a little bit dry on the dry side, always, you know, run again the clean water. We're putting some clean water here. And not all edges have to be soft. Some could be a little wet. I mean, a little harder. So I'm just adding a bit more variety here over this white. And you can also add some of the yellow or orange. So it's not the same color everywhere. I'm just dabbing a little bit. And again, I'm using this Canson canvas pad. Not bad. You can still lift, so I'm enjoying it. It looks fine to me. So yeah, maybe just make sure that you have some variety. Nothing is overly precise or too smooth. I know things have the tendency to smooth out a bit. So here, just adding some more water on this side. All right, and even if you have some spatter, that's okay. You can always add, you know, birds eventually on top of this. So this is our little sky. And as you can see, some of the edges I'm smoothing with clean water, some I'm just leaving as is. And I guess there are some other clouds far back. I can take some of the cooler red, or actually let's mix it more of an orange. So yellow, cooler red, and just add smaller clouds because that's going to create a little bit of a distance, sense of depth. So as long as they're thinner, smaller, that's how we get this whole sense of depth. Everything far away, as we remember, gets smaller and softer and not as obvious. So let's smooth them out a little bit in some areas, and voila, we're doing good. And now we're going to keep going now with the water, with that ocean water. We're gonna wet our paper with lots of water. Let's wet it. I need to clean this. Okay, so we're just wetting our area. You can leave now, you can leave some areas not completely wet, so kind of run your brush but not everywhere, because we can have some dry brush technique here and there, and make sure this is nicely gradating and there is a smooth transition between the sky and the ocean. So we're gonna have something like an underpainting a little bit, because obviously the sky is casting this whole yellow everywhere, which I like that. So we can have a nice light yellow everywhere, just pretty much everywhere. That could be your life, really. And we will paint all these waves on top. So wet on wet, some yellow. I'm adding maybe some orange here in the very front, because obviously it's getting a bit brighter. And we can leave some of these white. There is some foamy stuff on the bottom right that I'm going to leave. Maybe even just wipe with my paper towel, because they will be lighter, slightly lighter, and obviously they're closer to us and lit. Okay, so here by the light, so here we put some yellow. All right, and now let's mix that color for the water and the waves. And we're going to work from the back forward, so everything in the back again won't have any waves. It will be very, very smooth, and as we come forward, these waves are going to start looking more and more pronounced and with a higher contrast. So I'm going to mix a blue. Let's mix some blue. I'm taking this cerulean blue. You can pick, if you have phthalo blue. That's probably not a bad choice, but phthalo is so bright and it's so heavy on pigment. I will immediately mix it with some red, because obviously this blue is picking from the sky. It's picking some color from the sky. It's not by itself, sitting by itself as is. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of red, and even a little bit of orange. It's gonna get some tone. So basically it's all toned down, and we can just run our brush horizontally. It's going to leave interesting dry brush. See how it leaves this interesting dry brush technique? So these are like shimmers from the water. It's a nice way to create light. So I'm gonna also kill that edge. As we said, the transition has to be softer, so I'd like this edge to be softer between the water and the sky. And since we're now coming closer, I'm gonna start showing maybe some waves, like a little bit of waves. I'm still using my flat brush, and we just tap it a little here, a little there, just to start showing maybe a bit of waves. And they're still a little quite straight since they're far away, and as we come closer they will have more shape. But here I'm just adding some more color, and now the blue can be a little bit more pronounced. So we're just adding this overall tone over it, and I'm gonna grab a bigger brush. Let's grab a bigger brush, get some of this blue. Let's not use a very bright blue, but just mix it with some red, because obviously it is picking up from the sky. So imagine water is so reflective, it reflects everything, above, below, anything. So I'm just starting to add these little shapes of the waves. They're not quite straight. Now as we come closer, they're going to get a little bigger. And you guys did such a great job with the waves, so you should be pros by now with waves. And you know, you can be super, it could be fun. It doesn't have to be ultra organized, but here now we're going to start having a little bit more shape. So I'm just dab horizontally, sort of. And don't forget to lose some of these edges. If you end up having some really harsh edges, make sure you just really soften some of them. Water should not have very sharp edges unless it's really lit very sharply by the light, and that's when it starts reflecting things in a more distinct way. But here, as we come closer, these waves are going to be obviously more pronounced. So here is some more blue, a little bit of red. I just want to make a more intense color. It's not just pure blue, but just add some red to it. And yeah, it may turn a little purple. So I'm going to tackle, here is one big wave somewhere here. So again, horizontal, chap, a little bit, maybe a touch of orange to intensify it, to warm it up, because it is warm, it's closer, its light is reflecting. And we're going to just keep adding these nice little lines. It shouldn't look like lines. You know, water is again soft, there's a lot of movement to it, so just picture this moving at all times. It should not have anything outlined, anything that is very much too distinct. So you can take even your paper towel and maybe have some areas that show some texture. Also, there's lots of texture going on, like squint your eye. We're always squinting our eyes, and as we squint our eyes, we can just keep adding this texture a little bit if things are still wet, just to make it richer. That's how we create things that are more interesting. And again, the big wave. Okay, before we go to the big wave, let's just keep going here. There's some more smaller waves. And now that we have this red sky, I don't want to miss that part. So let's add red, like really brighter red and orange right here before we introduce that big wave, because this is a nice reflection that we have from the sky that's going to unify the painting. So you can run again, dry brush a little bit, have some nice reflective elements with the dry brush, maybe a bit of a brighter orange here and there. Things are, so the wave goes up and there it just goes down. So everything that goes down obviously changes its color, because imagine that is a different plane altogether. So I'm just adding a bit of that plane. So again, dry brush technique. And here you can, you know, wet a bit more, and you can do this spatter again with some water on top of all this, again to create some interest and make it wild. You can make it as wild as you want, and here you can just kind of wipe some things and have a lot of fun. So I'm ignoring totally the sailboat because it's all a silhouette really, so there's not much that we should worry about. We can always edit later. But here, so now let's not ignore the white foam. We're going to leave it as is, from as the paper pretty much. And now we're going to mix a really nice color, dark color for that wave right in the front. And here I'm going to wet. Let's wet it so we don't lose this wet on wet. Just gonna wet a little bit on the right, and very, very quickly create. Okay, my spatter technique is creating a bit more humongous dots here. It's okay, that's all right. So let's mix a nice dark. Here is the blue. Here is, I'm getting this paint gray, blue, brown, and a little bit of burnt sienna and blue. So it is a nice dark tone, and it doesn't look too dark, so I'm just putting some more paint gray, burnt sienna, and let's create this dark and see how that's going to really give the impression. And I'm moving, this is how I'm moving my brush, not horizontally, but I'm just sliding it pretty much the way the wave is. And you can have some, you know, dry brush here, basically showing some of this crazy movement of this wave happening. Obviously it's casting a shadow right in front, so you can have really crazy movements and a lot of fun, because that is your foreground anyway. So it should have a very lot of contrast. And okay, here we go. So I'm just adding a little bit more dark right behind, just looking at the structure of this wave. Again, squint your eyes. We're squinting our eyes and adding some lines. And I'm just adding, while I have this color here, I just wanted to add some more dark right there. Now some of these brush strokes seem a bit harsh, so you can always again wipe some, add some water, soften some of these edges, soften some of the edges. Okay, here's some water. I'm just tossing some water because this is how we should create the foam. Obviously you have some white, but we can always like wipe some and have some texture going this way. See, I'm just dabbing with my paper towel to create that texture with the foam. And if you covered some of this white area, you throw in some water. You throw in some water on the very top, and you can always again lift. I mean, in my opinion, water should be painted wild, like with wild abandon. Just have fun with it. It is water after all. Just imagine there's movement. There's a lot of movement going on. So it should be going fine. And like here for the foreground, we can add some more orange. Let's add some more orange. Again, there is again this plane where there is the reflection from the sky and the light. So I'm just putting some dry brush again on very top. And it looks a little too different, so let's add some red, just touch of red. Make it a bit darker. Maybe again some of this blue to connect. And this whole foamy area, we can either create it with all these elements of the water. You can either use a masking. Could have used a masking fluid. If not, I'm just gonna get a dry white color and just dry brush it on top of it to create some more, you know, shapes. Okay. So here we go. All right, and now everything, we're just checking to see how things are, and we're looking at, like, again, squinting your eye. I can take my bigger brush and get some orange and run it right here, over here, right behind that wave, because that needs to have some more color. In my case, it's a bit too light. So you can just add some more of this orange yellow, and you can create a little bit of lines, you know, to give the sense of waves. And we should not go too many times over it. We want to keep it again spontaneous. Definitely I would encourage adding some more dark. Water should feel heavy and should feel darker, but in a case like this where I see I need to have some more dark, I will just definitely add it now right on top where I put some more paint. As long as you keep the principle of having the dark in the very front and maybe a little bit of a dry brush here, you can have some fun wiping with your paper towel some of these. If you lost it, you can just add it later. Again, dry brush it, maybe do some of these shapes here. There is a shape going on. So here we go. And pretty much whatever we learned while we painted that crazy wave in the beginning with the stormy sky, with the stormy sea, sort of the same principle, just adding some more. So here just wanted to add some more for variety, adding a little bit of a dry brush right on top. And it shouldn't be too light. The foreground should not be too light, so I'm adding a little bit more dark. Maybe some areas could be dark, but most of it should be really dark. All right, let me know if you guys have any questions. If stuff is not working, just wave, raise your hand. Okay, definitely. So I'm just adding some more dark right here in the very front, even more, because we know watercolor dries very light. So I'm just going to add, and again, if you want to pick it up, tap it. There is something behind that wave, and now this is our like main, almost like the first swipe with a very wild brush strokes and everything is crazy. And then you can always pick an area and do some more detail. Like with a smaller brush we can always add some more detail. If we see, I printed those and my print looks a bit fuzzy, so hopefully you're using a better print and better reference. But and I'm sure there's tons of detail here, so you can always, you know, add some more detail as you go. All right, so here I'm just gonna add a little bit of a brush stroke with a dry brush. With a smaller brush it goes down. Again, we need to have variety. Some dry brush, wet on wet. Just pick an area and look closely what's going on here. Maybe a little bit sharper. So some edges sharper, some edges should be not so sharp. And again, I like this texture that the dry brush is creating. So it just pops here and there. Right on top, but we don't want to overdo it. Again, it's a thin line, but I feel like mine really sort of dried a bit lighter, so I can do a bit of with a big brush. You know, for those of you who've done this class in the previous years, we always have this unifying big brush at the very end where I just go woohoo, kind of to unify the whole thing. And here I just go and do a little bit of a dry brush right on top of it. Because I wanted this to be a bit darker. It is sunset, obviously, so it shouldn't be too light. And here I'm just darkening it a little more. Just a little more, but as long as the foreground feels the darkest, we're good. We're good. And if it gets too dark, again, pick it up with some paper towel to give an illusion of waves and texture and light falling. Now at this point we can do the sailboat. We can add the sailboat. See how it's, speaking of buckling, I know there was a question of paper buckling, so I'll put something heavy here so it doesn't really buckle too much, but eventually it will straighten. And when it dries, I usually just take the whole paper and run it on an edge kind of from the opposite side and just go back and forth, and it just straightens everything. Okay, so here we go with our silhouette. Again, I'm taking the paint gray and we'll mix it with maybe some red to get a warmer black almost color, but just mix it with red. Should be like a dark purple, and we will paint a nice silhouette. Yeah, my brush is a bit too thick here, too big. I should have probably picked a smaller brush, but that's okay. As long as you have that point, you're on the right track. We're going here. I'm just moving. It could be painterly, done in a painterly way. It doesn't have to be a cutout, you know what I mean, and you can have some areas shown, some could be not quite. And we can actually now soften some of these edges, because imagine this boat is far away, it's not quite in our face, so I'm just running a little bit of clean, make sure it's a clean water so it doesn't interfere with that sky behind, just to soften some of those edges right here. Not all, leave some, because it is sort of the focal point, but just softening some of them to make it more interesting. And then the body of the boat, let's do this. All right, just a bit of a, again, now you see it, now you don't, some edges can disappear. I'm softening it again, and it's far away so you don't see any reflection. When boats and things are far away, it reflects only if they're ginormous, like let's say we have a city and a town and something is reflecting. I just slightly soften it so the reflection will be tiny. So now you can take a smaller brush, I can get the rigger and maybe put a bit of a straight line right on top. And these are very cool little details, elements. When we paint sailboats, there's whole stuff, interesting things going on, so you can dry brush these elements. I usually make things up, really, just a little dot here, maybe a little line. You don't really quite see it completely, so here I'm just going to go straight, going up. One line, and maybe there's things happening. Yeah, we don't want to overdo it, just a dot here, a dot there. And now I'm looking at the painting, and I missed that red. That red should be way more prominent onto the water. Maybe instead of yellow underpainting, I should have had a red underpainting. But these are thoughts that, that come usually afterwards. So you can always add this a little here, maybe in the middle ground, or maybe in the foreground over here. And I'm just going with a little more orange, a little red. Just I want to introduce this color down here. And it is a dry brush right on top, but don't overdo it, because then it's going to start mixing and we're running into the, again, little muddy situation. So if you lost something, dab it with your paper towel, create some texture. Here I'm just gonna maybe lift a little, and we, again, danger of overworking it is approaching, so I'm gonna leave this water as is. Now you can grab the white. Let's grab some white titanium and maybe do some spatter, a little bit of a spatter technique here, especially in the very front when things are going wild and we have the waves hitting the ground. So this should have maybe some of the spatter. So I'm taking some white, spatter in the very front. We can dip a bit and introduce some detail, maybe a little dry brush. And I'm just dabbing into my paper towel here to just really dry my brush from any paint, from any water. I'm dipping straight into the white, and we can just dry brush some of this foam right here in the very front, very gently, without mixing it with any color. I know there's stuff happening. You can just dry brush it a bit. I use my fingers sometimes really to make it look rougher. So here just dip, and it is a quite big brush I'm using, really it is big. So here on the very tip of that dark wave we have this white highlight. Now generally, yeah, you can use maybe masking fluid for this, but it would have just I'm just so not happy with those harsh edges that it leaves when you take it out. Then you have to go back and kill those edges and it creates a problem. So here I'm just adding a little bit of this dry brush with white, and that's what the purpose is really of the white in the watercolor set, is to add highlights. Basically dry brush, not drawing with, not mixing it with anything. So here I'm just gonna add maybe a little bit more dry brush, and again you can add probably some of these thingies here that the water creates. Not too much, don't overdo it so it doesn't look too much. Like it should be very, very subtle, very subtle. Some more spatter, especially on that wave right here where the foam is. And we're good. And this is how I would approach really this particular wave. Now it's we have about what, 40 minutes. We can paint the other one too if you'd like, guys. Anyone who is willing to just go, "Woohoo, let's do a quick one for the other," which is very, very similar. As a matter of fact, it's very similar. I just like that nice reflection that ship has. Now, how you can make this painting even more interesting is by adding a bunch of birds, as we know, or something, because this boat kind of feels, yeah, it's nice, but maybe we can add a little right next to the boat. So let's not fly these birds everywhere, but just a little here, maybe two, like smudges almost. It's probably going to add a little interest, more interest to it. But should not overwork it. We should not overwork it. We can, I know there is a bunch of waves, more waves, but have some quiet areas here. Maybe dry brush a little bit to create a sense of light, but that's pretty much it. We're not gonna copy what we see. So I see a kind of a straight line here, which shouldn't be happening. Again, it's water, so it should look more wavy, like start, stop, that type of thing, and adding some of the details. So hopefully you guys at this point where you're ready to stop it and not overwork too much this painting. And I'm about to stop because I will overwork it if I start adding. But yeah, that's the whole principle. So it is a gradient pretty much happening, and this whole craziness in the very front, you can work more on that if you'd like with a dry brush with a darker tone, and add some more maybe lines, or, and again, subtle, don't overwork it, a little bit more contrast to bring it even forward, to create this whole sense of depth. Water is not very defined, like it's flying all over the place, all over the map, so it shouldn't look like lines, shouldn't look like anything, unless when it's quiet. When it's quiet, then it's very smooth, looks like mirror, really. But in this case, it's a bit different. So I'm just stopping at this point. And whatever's in the sky, it's reflecting below. So let me know if you guys, because we have plenty of time, we can really do a very quick, sketchy painting of the next one, another second one of that ship. It's up to you. If you feel like you're at the stopping point and you don't want to overwork your painting, which is my recommendation. Now the horizon line is important to look straight. It has to look straight. Make sure you never make your way like horizon to be all this wavy, because this is not very realistic, not very convincing. Always has to be very straight, and that actually gives a sense of depth. I know we talk about being also softer, not too sharp. If you lost the straight line, you can always go back and just run a very lightly, just to straighten it. It should not be tilted, it should not be wavy, it should be really straight. That gives the sense of depth, because it is far away. So here we go with our painting of those waves. I know sometimes sunsets we run the danger of creating some, I don't know, that's a thin line between tacky and a good looking sunset, because we've seen them so many times. So we don't in a particular style that, I don't know, I sometimes I cringe, but it should look painterly, it should look exciting, especially if it's so stormy and fun. Even if it isn't, just you make it look a little bit more exciting. So the spatters always helpful for creating movement. I'm just adding a little bit more, especially here in the front, whatever's happening. And ta-da! And always squint your eyes if you've lost some of the things, or if you've missed, or if it looks too light. You can always take your big brush, and we've always done it before. Just mix a nice muted color. If it looks too busy in the back, you can always just soften it and just go with one color, but one color only. So I can do this to mine, because this kind of seems like a little bit too much. I wish I sort of was a bit more quiet there. So I'm taking my red and blue, and I'm gonna mix probably more red than blue, and really do this business to it. To quiet it a bit, even a bit orange, just to quiet it a bit, because it was too much and it was a bit distracting. So yeah, these are decisions we make sometimes, and they seem scary, really. Those are scary decisions, like, why did I do that? But they do help. They do help, because I wanted to focus more on this rather than that. So here we go. right, guys, so hopefully this is helpful, and we can do a quick one with the next reference. Up to you. On the monitor, what I'm seeing here on that on my laptop, everything looks really dark, and it's not as dark, so don't get fooled. It's actually, there's a whole bunch of colors going on here for some weird reason. It seems super dark. Yeah, I'll keep the light on, but yeah. Yes, it's not black like it seems there, so on the video it's going to be a bit lighter. I think it's WebEx. It's always WebEx. It's WebEx fault.
Yes.
Yes. There we go. All right, that's enough. I'm totally overworking this painting. So if you guys ready, we can just do a quick one. And you know, we've said this before. Painting fast helps develop